He's Spider-Man's clone, then the real Spider-Man, then Spider-Man's clone again, then he becomes a bad guy. We're talking about Ben Reilly, aka the Scarlet Spider. Hi, I'm Nando, and in these videos, I take a character from Marvel Comics. I talk about their background, their power set, their personality, and I give you some reading recommendations. And this is all because this week, this character is being introduced into the collectible card game, Marvel Snap. But most of the video, we're talking about the character, and this is a big one. Buckle up, because we're going to be talking about Ben Reilly, one of the most complicated characters we have even touched in this series. So we've talked about some characters like Beta Ray Bill, who've been around for a while, and we've talked about some characters who are new, but have made, pretty big dent. But Ben Reilly is a character who was born from an incredibly complicated story, and the more you learn about him, the more interesting he gets. So I'm very excited. Also, this is another one of those videos where my cat Mortimer is on my lap. Say hello to everybody, Mortimer. Okay, let's talk about Ben Reilly. So the character that is Ben Reilly first shows up in Amazing Spider-Man 149, written by Jerry Conway with art by Ross Andrew, Mike Esposito, Janice Cohen, and Annette Kawecki. I'm not going to say this is a key issue because nothing that happens here really makes a difference in terms of who Ben Reilly is, but this is technically the first time he shows up. And this story is about a guy named Miles Warren. Miles Warren is a teacher at Empire University. In the aftermath of Gwen Stacy's death, this is obviously a very important moment for Spider-Man, but it was also an important moment for other people that just liked Gwen Stacy, like this guy. So he decides to clone her. Why was he able to do this? I don't know. I guess he just was. He's very smart. So this guy clones a copy of Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker. And when he does that, he realizes that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And he blames Spider-Man for Gwen Stacy's death, so he starts going after Spider-Man. Eventually, Miles Warren has the clone fight Spider-Man, so there's a bit of Spider-Man v. Spider-Man action. Big explosion. I'm pretty sure Miles Warren is presumed dead at this point, and the clone of Spider-Man also seems to die. This happened in the 70s, and it's not that this was not an important thing that happened, but this, at the time, did not seem like that important of a thing. You just assumed you'd never see this clone again. A lot of time passes, we get to the 90s, and we do the Clone Saga. Now, I am not going to describe all the events of the Clone Saga, mostly because, all of the important stuff I want to talk about that Ben Reilly does comes after that. And obviously, Ben Reilly plays a big part in the Clone Saga, but it is just one of the most complicated stories in comics history. Owen Likes Comics made a good video about what happened in this story, but also why it kind of became out of control. The important thing for our purposes is that this clone was revealed to have been alive, and he started using a different name, because he was like, well, I guess I can't be Peter Parker, that's another guy who's already out, I must be the clone of him, so I will go by Ben Reilly, Ben being Uncle Ben's first name, and Reilly being Aunt May's maiden name. So Ben Reilly is essentially another Peter Parker, and he's the clone, you would assume, but it is revealed that he is not the clone. The character that is taking the place of Peter Parker is actually the clone of Peter Parker, and Ben Reilly is the real Peter Parker. Part of why they did this comes from the fact that Marvel wanted a new Spider-Man who could feel like the old Spider-Man, who was, poor and had problems and wasn't connected to a family, so he could do all kinds of things. He didn't have to worry about that. So they came to an agreement. Ben would be Spider-Man from here on out. He was called the Scarlet Spider because of his costume. But now Mary Jane is pregnant. Peter wants to move to Portland to just not be Spider-Man anymore. So he goes to Ben, he's like, you're Spider-Man. And for a while, Ben just was the Spider-Man. And this is all covered in what I will say is the first important issue for Ben Reilly. This is Sensational Spider-Man number 0. It's written and drawn by Dan Jurgens with art by Klaus Johnson, Gregory Wright, and Richard Starklings. So Ben's Spider-Man in New York, he joins the New Warriors for a little while, hangs around with the X-Men, does the Onslaught storyline, but then we got more information about clone stuff, and this is that all this Clone Saga stuff, while it seemed like it was Miles Warren, there was actually someone else pulling the strings, and it's Norman Osborn. So Norman Osborn is behind the whole Clone Saga. So now we're getting into real heavy retcon territory. Retcons being retroactive continuity. Things that are changed to having always been this the whole time, but we just didn't know. And another retcon is that Peter, the one in Portland, turns out to have actually been the real Peter. So originally, we had Spider-Man and Spider-Man clone. They got in a fight. Spider-Man was injured. Spider-Man clone got better and was like, well, I must be Spider-Man, went to live a Spider-Man life. They both showed up, they met each other, and found out like, oh, I'm actually the clone. You're not that, like, listen, you're seeing now probably why this event didn't work and why these ideas just felt so reactive. And this story ends with Ben Reilly getting killed. So he dies, gets skewered by the glider like in the Spider-Man 1 movie. And that's it for a while. Until the 2010s. Ben is resurrected by the Jackal, and here Ben beats the Jackal and kind of becomes the Jackal. And before the Jackal was like a big green monster guy, now he's got a cool like Egyptian jackal-y looking helmet, but it's like still Jackal. Oh, I haven't talked about this, by the way. There are multiple clones. It's not just Ben Reilly. The other really important clone that I think we talked about in one of the videos this month is Kane. Kane is the more evil clone who is also kind of redeemed eventually, but he's the one with the dark outfit, and he's going around messing up Ben Reilly's life for a while. So anyway, Dead No More storyline. This is in the 2010s. The Jackal resurrects Ben Reilly, and then Ben Reilly takes over for the Jackal and starts resurrecting everybody. He's like, we need a new Gwen Stacy, and Gwen Stacy's dad, and he's bringing back, villains that were dead. And he's like, Spider-Man, hey, you should help me. We can all work together. And at this point, Ben is pretending to be the Jackal, using this Jackal helmet getup. Eventually, Ben, the Jackal, is like, listen, I can bring back Uncle Ben. We really liked him. This is really important to us, so let's do that. But then things go wrong when Dr. Octopus decides to kill all the clones, and then they turn into little zombies. It's called the carrion virus. It has to do with Miles Warren and the way that his cloning sometimes breaks down. But basically, this cloning system that Ben was setting up and this company are all gone. Miles Warren, the Jackal, is also killed at the end of this. And Ben's like, you know what? I gotta start over again. And let's do Scarlet Spider again. So this is, I would say, important issue number 2. This is Ben Reilly Scarlet Spider Volume 1, Issue 1. It came out in 2017. It's written by Peter David with art by Mark Bagley, John Dell, Jason Keith, and VC's Joe Caramagna. In this story, Ben Reilly goes to Las Vegas and makes his new Spider debut there. It's funny because the first page of this book, he's on the Statue of Liberty and talking about the city where he is, and then we realize, oh, he's on the New York casino. If everything Ben did as the Jackal wasn't enough of a red flag, this is where we get to see that things are not going super well inside Ben's head, because he is being haunted by different versions of himself, different personas that he's put around. He's got a new Scarlet Spider costume, so that's how like the old Scarlet Spider is him from the past, kind of talking to himself. He will eventually take the original Scarlet Spider costume back. It's a tricky one because I don't think at the time people really liked it, but since then people really come to like the Scarlet Spider costume. And yeah, Ben fights Kane in Las Vegas. He was in one of the Midnight Sun stories, specifically because Mephisto took over a hotel in Vegas. So like he was not summoned by the rest of the Midnight Suns. They were just already there, and he was like, hey, I'm Spider-Man, I go here too. And then we get into another big Spider event, Spider-Geddon. But yeah, so based on characters I talk about a lot, because I don't really talk about the Spider characters a lot, I talk about the X-Men characters a lot, I do think that Ben Reilly feels a lot like Havoc. Scott Summers, the brother who's together, he's the leader, everybody likes him, all the fans know him. Havoc, liked by some of the fans, but he's got problems, and that's Ben Reilly's deal. Honestly, the way that he's saving people, asking him for money, he feels like someone like a Booster Gold or something like that. But I do think this series is fun. Now I want to talk about the most recent developments with Ben for the last important issue, and some of you are probably rolling your eyes because you know what word I'm about to say, but let's talk about Chasm. So the Beyond Corporation, which is a bad guy corporation. Well, I mean, I guess we knew that at the time. But like in the story, they have Ben Reilly become the new Spider-Man and work for them. And here, Ben realizes that he's having an issue with his brain. Like his memories are not where he expected them to be. And he realizes, I'm missing some of my memories. He blames Peter Parker for this. He's like, Peter Parker wouldn't let me have those memories. He's so jealous and he has to hoard them all for himself. In reality, this is something the Beyond Corporation is doing. But this is where Ben fully goes off the deep end and becomes like a straight up bad guy. He gets goo on him, so it's your classic evil goo powers, which give him like an inverse spider sense, which lets him immediately counteract danger. He can also create weapons, and he's got the regular spider kit. But this character is called Chasm now, because in his heart, like in his brain, in his reality, there is a hole. There's something that was taken from him, and it created a chasm. And this storyline all came to a head with the Dark Web crossover. It was an X-Men, Spider-Man crossover, although a lot of characters got involved, Miss Marvel, like it was something that affected everybody, basically all the New York heroes. And the thing that I think is so interesting about this is Ben is a clone who's evil. Like, he's evil now. He was never always evil, but like now he's fully evil. And he blames his evil cloneness on the world. Like, Peter gets all the breaks and he always loses, and he doesn't have his memories now. He doesn't have his identity. Ben ends up in limbo and he meets another character who has a very similar whole thing going on. And that is Madeline Pryor, the Goblin Queen, who, if you don't know her from the Inferno comics or other Marvel comics that she's been in the recent past, she was a big player in X-Men 97, especially episode 3. And her whole deal is she is a clone of a popular character. Originally, they didn't know she was a clone, although this is a little bit different in X-Men 97. But at the time, she takes Jean Grey's place, but then Jean Grey comes back and Scott like kicks her to the curb and she becomes bad. She makes a deal with a demon in Limbo, which is kind of like the hell dimension place in Marvel Comics. So these two characters are very similar. And I think this as a backbone for this event is cool. Taking these two characters that don't really have a history together, but have very similar goals and similar issues, and having them team up. Which is good because Chasm's very powerful, but he's sort of a mess. He doesn't have a lot of friends, nobody to work with. Whereas Madeline Pryor is in charge of Limbo, so she could just unleash all of the demons of Limbo. And what that means is, sometimes it's just like big demons flying around, but a lot of the time it's like the mailbox turns into a big monster mailbox with a big mouth that its teeth that is like, give me your mail and then I'm gonna eat you. Everything in New York turns into that. So this is recommended reading number 3. Dark Web Volume 1, Issue 1. It's written by Zeb Wells with art by Adam Kubert, Frank Martin, and VC's Joe Caramagna. Oh, this is also pretty important, and this is something that's helpful for knowing the Dark Web event. Ben Reilly does have a long-term girlfriend, a character named Janine. That's not her real name, but that is like the name she goes by. She's a runaway. And much like Ben, especially this later Ben we're talking about now, Janine has problems. She had an abusive father who she killed. So her and Ben have like a little bit of a connection in the idea that they're kind of the bad version of themselves, or the one that doesn't get to have the happy ending, whatever. And for that reason, when everything's going on with Dark Web, Janine is just around basically, and she's like, I want to do bad guy stuff, I can't help. And Madeline Pryor's like, all right, I'll give you a superhero deal. Like, I'll give you superpowers. She calls her Hallows Eve, and she's given a pretty cool costume and superpowers that come from masks that she has an infinite amount of in a bag. So she can just pull out a mask, put it on, and then kind of gets the superpowers of whatever the mask is. It's unclear if I don't know if she could like make a mask, like draw a mask and then just put that on. I think she has to like get it, but either way, she is, for all intents and purposes, the Mary Jane of Ben Reilly, and she is now the bad guy, Hallows Eve. And Madeline Pryor wanted Jean's memories, which I believe she gets, but because Ben hasn't gotten all of the revenge she wanted, he goes rogue and, usurps Madeline. But then Madeline is able to eventually beat Ben. She takes over, creates this New York embassy, and puts Ben in jail in the Limbo embassy, which is just like a place you can visit that is an extension of like a hell dimension that is in New York. I'm sure there are other things that Ben has done since then, but that is most of what I know about Ben Reilly, at least as of, 2024. As far as media outside of comics is concerned, the main thing you probably remember Ben Reilly from is his cameo in Across the Spider-Verse, played by Andy Samberg, and he is portrayed as a member of the Spider Society who is angsty and serious and brooding, and I think that all works, especially considering where Ben Reilly has been for the last 10 years. Also, for some reason, he has this very cool cell shading effect, which would suggest that he's from the comics or something in a way that the rest of them aren't. I'm not sure what the deal is with that. Looks great though. In Marvel Snap, Scarlet Spider is a 4-cost, 5-power card. With the Activate, add an extra clone of this to another location. So I think it's pretty obvious what they're going for here. He's a clone of Spider-Man. So like Mr. Sinister, another character who is known for cloning himself, Ben Reilly creates another Ben Reilly, which is really just like creates the actual Ben Reilly. Or is that the Ben Reilly, that we're having fun? Honestly, as a take on his power set, I think it's okay. Nothing incredibly groundbreaking. I don't think he synergizes incredibly well with any of the Spider-Man cast, at least not the main Spider-Man cast. The idea with this character is you're going to be bumping his power up before you activate. So you're going to try to get a 10 power, 20 power maybe, Ben Reilly, and then you're going to activate on the last turn and create another 20 power Ben Reilly. So he's going to work well with the characters that do that. The Wakandans, for example, Shuri, that doubles power. Okoye, who adds power to your deck. Nakia, who adds power to your hand. You have Gwenpool, who can add power to cards in your hand. You have Forge, who can add power to other cards. And then Rania, new card, she's going to be able to boost up your Scarlet Spider. Overall, though, like looking at Gwen Stacy, Peter Parker, neither of those two work particularly well with Ben Reilly. I can't think of any of the Spider villains that work particularly well with Ben Reilly. There is no Madeline Pryor card, at least not yet, so she can't work well with Ben Reilly. And there's no Hallows Eve card, so she can't work well with Ben Reilly. Some teams with New Warriors, he'll work kind of well with Nova. Actually does work pretty well with Namora, another member of the New Warriors, because she'll be able to boost up your Ben Reilly while he's on the field, and then, as long as he's the only card in that location, and then you can double that. So that'd be pretty useful. See other characters he's worked with. Doesn't work particularly well with Onslaught. There is no Jackal card. Green Goblin doesn't really matter. None of the Midnight Suns I don't think worked very well with him. I don't know how usable this card is. I think it's an interesting card, and I think it's going to be a card that people are able to do cool stuff with. But I do think, kind of like Beta Ray Bill, it should have a pretty high ceiling, but it's the kind of thing where it takes a lot of work, and in reality, there's other ways to get that amount of power out of cards. Like, it feels like he is going to have to be like the centerpiece of this deck. And listen, I'm not forecasting here. I can't guarantee that this will or will not be a great card. But against a card like Aranya, per se, or even Madam Web, like, they make a deck that exists already way better. Whereas I cannot think of a deck that needs a Scarlet Spider, or could use a Scarlet Spider before they could use some other all-around good card, like a Cassandra Nova or a Sage or something like that. As usual this month, great variants. The version by Ryan Kennard and Eduardo Mello looks great. The Spotlight Cash, the In-Hyuk Lee variant, also looks very good. And then you have another version of Ben Reilly by Emilio Lopez and Kari Randolph. I think also looks pretty cool. Like, Ben Reilly's an interesting one because there's so many looks for Ben Reilly to go for. Like, even in the Vegas arc, he had a couple of different outfits. Chasm obviously is an outfit he could have. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for cool looking outfits. As far as Spotlight Weeks, I think this one is pretty strong. White Widow's a great card, and Scar is a good card. Scar does what Scar needs to do pretty well. But I do think out of everybody this month, Scarlet Spider's the one I'm maybe the least excited about. He's the only one I probably won't get. But there's worse cards that have been created, in previous months. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like it, share it, subscribe, all that stuff. All these videos go up 1 week early on Nebula, so you can check out next week's video, which will be Agent Venom, another character connected to Spider-Man. This one I think is, like Ben Reilly, he's a character who's existed for a while, has done a lot of things. I think Agent Venom has what might be a more clear arc than Ben Reilly. I think that's part of the problem with Ben Reilly, right? Is it's kind of all over the place. The fact that he was just Chasm feels so is separate from other things that Ben Reilly has. Like, look, he's just been all over. He was the Jackal. He was Chasm. He was just kind of regular Spider-Man for a while. Yeah. I don't hate him. I don't hate Ben Reilly. So like, share this video. Thank you for watching. That's all I got. Stay safe. I will see you next time.